Welcome to episode 3 of the Quickcast. For today's episodes, me, Mariano Huerta, I'm going to be the main host, and today I'm being joined by co host Masa. Say hi.
Hello, hello.
This episode, as you may have heard from last episode, is going to be about GMOs and mainly to what extent can GMOs help eradicate the food crisis. First off, we're going to introduce generally what's genetic engineering, talk about the global food crisis, the pros and cons of GMOs. We're going to have a single small ad break that we're going to take in the middle. Final thoughts, and conclude with a little tune that we have prepared for you. So, first off, the global food crisis. It is said that in the next 50 years, we're going to face a massive food crisis, not unlike the crisis that we're having today. Since, well, it's really obvious that at first there's millions of people starving to death thanks to the increasing demand, thanks to the rising population, and just overall demand and lack of distribution in food. This is really going to hit hard the entire country since all around the globe we simply can't produce as much food as we need, and in response to that, farmers are just flat out burning down entire forests just to get even more ground to just breed more animals and just make more food for the overall population. This is going to be a really big problem that we're going to face. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we can see that it's been kind of a problem in the structure of society that the way we grow our food and the way we mass produce things. I mean, if it's always just ultimately about the most production that we can get out of something. So we really don't actually get all the benefits. I mean, I didn't do the research for this podcast, but I have read about some of the issues, and a lot of our agricultural techniques, and I mean our the way we handle meat, for example, with cows and things as such. They really impact the not only what we consume, but how much of it is available, and especially in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought up the meat consumption because apparently, according to the UN, it's a really big problem. Not only because, well, we treat really bad those animals. So like, how do I explain this? They are not only suffering, but we are making our planet even worse. Um, it's thanks to our new type of diet. We consume more complex types of foods, which in turn create even more work for farms who can't keep up. So, how can we solve this problem? Well, the answer to that is fairly simple and fairly complicated, depending on what angle you need. First, we need to understand what exactly is genetic engineering and GMOs. Well, for anyone hearing, this is what I want to do when I grow up, go to university. I want to dedicate my entire life to genetic engineering, especially for the topic of GMOs, which stand for genetically modified organisms. This is a way of scientists modify the DNA of specific plants to give specific results. For example, they can give just fruits make way more protein or have a specific pesticide that kills people or just overall create a better solution for this crisis. There's various pros and cons to using GMOs. The pros of using GMOs are way more vast. Just for an example, some plants are genetically engineered to destroy the digestive system of pests. That's just crazy. So if a single one of member of the species of those pests, just little bugs, eats that genetically engineered plant, they will die. and there's no negative consequences for the human digestive system, since just the protein that they create is only and specifically designed to only kill those pets. What do you think about that?
Uh, yeah, I mean it's quite a an interesting subject. I mean, there's many branches to the way we manage this kind of genetically modified technology, right? But I mean, it's I mean, it's also a constant battle between what we find morally correct and what is actually a benefit towards society and the human body. Because I mean, ultimately, if we don't use GMOs, well, I mean, it's yet to be seen really in today's society how it would function, since most of the present time we've actually had GMOs. But it's I mean it's really a complicated subject, which personally I'm not that informed on, but hearing what you say really resounds with me, and I feel like there's many different options to it ultimately.
Yeah, glad to hear that. Now on the cons that we're going to brought up in just a few minutes, we're going to specifically talk about what you said, like what's the cultural and just moral implication of using GMOs. I'll first continue with some of the pros, just to really sell this idea. It really minimizes impact on the planet. This is due to creative just uh, fruits and in general just fruits or vegetables, whatever you need. The GMOs are produced to create way more proteins than their normal counterparts, and they create an even bigger shelf time, creating not only a bigger time window, if you want, if you say so, for farmers to meet the demand that is constantly rising in today's day and age, but it's at the same time creating just a diet more viable for humans to digest in general. And there's so far not been a single instance of GMOs being linked with anything harmful. There's been attempts to it, definitely, but mainly are by groups that say the earth is flat, so not really academic sources to base your opinion on. A really big example of just GMO saving entire countries. It's about the Hawaiian papayan industry in the 1990s. So this technology goes way back. Just the Hawaiian papaya was actually met with in a deadly disease that completely wiped out all the crops from the 1990s crops of papaya in Hawaii. And don't know if you know this, but Hawaii really depends on those papayas. Without papayas, they're basically gone. So some scientists genetically engineered a papaya that was resistant to this pest and actually killed off. And they single-handedly retrieved all of Hawaii from the brink of economic distraught. So that's why I'm a really big fan of this GMOs and just genetic engineering in general. They're simply great, but they're not perfect. Here I'm going to bring up some of the cons of using GMOs and their controversies. So mainly they have a really bad reputation. In the 1960s, there was this method called atomic gardening, which on plain sight it really doesn't sound that great. Those were the beginnings of genetic engineering, where they grabbed plants and just bombarded them with just radiation just to see what happened. And people really get the wrong idea about that. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, yeah, obviously that doesn't sound like something very convincing. And yeah, I mean, as you were mentioning, right? Kind of going back to the pros and combining it with the cons. Ultimately, it's all about finding a balance, because uh, as you mentioned, there's a reason for why we ended up having GMOs. but there may also be a point where we have gone to another extreme, and it's I mean, it's finding the balance, which you really do know a lot about these GMOs, and how the impact happens, on a more biological level. And it's a touchy subject ultimately, because we have to look at many factors, but completely eliminating isn't the way to go, which many might think that that's kind of how it should be. But there's also a questioning of how much is enough, I think.
Yeah, again, there's this really common misconception about GMOs that they're harmful for the body. This presumption came back from atomic gardening, because people are simply not visualizing that their food no longer comes from fresh crops. It's as natural as it gets. We've been doing this for a really, really long time. I just said the concept of atomic gardening, which is not that old, 1960s, but that's only like on a controlled science environment. Actually, just a plain old banana, it's no longer what it was starting off, because we've been selectively breeding those bananas to have even less seeds and more of that juicy parts. So it's not completely new. It's actually ancient, this technology. So yeah, people really have a really bad just perception of GMOs. But for the more informed public, there's a really valid concern aside from just morals and saying it's not natural. So the main concern is that the very concept of sterile plants. These sterile plants are GMOs, which we create a specific plant. Just as a random example, let's say apples. This GMO will be created just to be standard. Okay, all around you can just buy this specific apple. What's wrong about it? It's when you plant it, its seeds are completely sterile, making it so that farmers need to buy every single year more seeds, creating this sort of monopoly around it. And well, like everyone can see why this is a terrible thing. And the worst of it's a really possible future, just depending on how we bring GMOs. That's the main concept. Like all around the world, there's been a protest to keep this out of the way, because this will definitely not solve the food crisis. If anything, it will make it even worse than it's already right now. Because not could you imagine just having sterile plants not only means that you don't do anything to the production of food, it actually hinders it. So we actually go under the requisites. So this is a part that we're actively trying to fight, just not to. So GMOs go beyond what it's the current technology, and we can make these life-saving plants that we can create, grow faster, have more proteins, be better for the environment, but not to go the extra mile and make it an economic disaster for the entire world. So we're approaching our ad break. So Masa, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really put it all into context. But yeah, I mean, as you were mentioning, right? It ultimately, there are obviously cons and there's obviously pros, but the technology's there, and I think we have the information. It's just a matter of how we use it ultimately, because we can't go to extremes. We have to really find that midpoint.
Yeah, definitely. So, if anyone is hearing this podcast, doubting the validity of this information, on here we have our bibliography, pretty extensive, all academic sources. So you can give it a read if you ever doubt all the facts that are being thrown out. You can also do your own research, so don't worry. Here we have our ad break.
Ba-ba-boom! You know the drill. New podcast. And of course, same old ad. Thanks once again to Anchor for sponsoring our podcast. I mean, they've just been great. They allow us to do this. If you don't know what it is, well, you really should. You should check out the other episodes. But basically, it's completely free. It's a podcasting app and website that allows you to create your own podcast, distribute it, earn money from it. It's really just wonderful piece of artwork, I would say. So yeah, go check out Anchor .fm or download the Anchor app. On with the episode. Thanks to Anchor.
Now, final thoughts on this topic. All around, just to sum up all this information, I know it's been a lot. We're hitting our 15-minute mark soon. I know it's been a lot of information, so let me just funnel it out for you. Basically, for the most part, scientific studies have demonstrated that GMOs are not harmful to the human body. So we can take that con out of the equation. So it's not harmful for the body, and it can have a really, really big impact on not only our economy, but our planet and in the lives of millions of billions of people around the world. It only depends on how we use this really dangerous technology, how that impact is going to be, either positive or negative. We can either create superhuman plants that can create tons and tons of proteins that grow way faster and are way better for the environment with their pesticide strengths, or we can go the other economic route and completely mess up this perfect technology and create sterile plants and create an economic monopoly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta say, I completely agree. It's really a complicated issue, and to all our listeners, I mean, obviously, as Huerta mentioned, we have all the resources looked up by Huerta, and they are all reliable as well as in all our podcasts. It's a Creekcast guarantee.
So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.